And so let's start with a little Aljo talk. He wins via split decision. I can't believe that he won via split decision only because Derek Cleary scored the 5th round in his favor. And that was probably the easiest round to score for Henry Cejudo. How did this happen? Michael Bell had it 10-9 Sterling, 10-9 Cejudo, 10-9 Cejudo, 10-9 Sterling, 10-9 Cejudo. Derek Cleary, 10-9 Sterling, 10-9 Cejudo, 10-9 Cejudo, 10-9 Sterling, 10-9 Sterling. That's the weird one. Eric Colon, who I agreed with, 10-9 Sterling, 10-9 Sterling, agree with that. 10-9 Cejudo, agree with that. 10-9 Sterling, 10-9 Cejudo in the 5th. That's what I agree with. And, you know, one of the big takeaways for me was it seemed like everyone who watched the fight live at The Rock, at the Prudential Center, which I didn't, seemed to have scored it for Cejudo, or at least most people. I saw Dana scored it for Aljamain, but it seemed like all the people that I saw that were there, media, fighters, pundits, whatever, seemed to favor Cejudo watching it live, but everyone who was watching it at home seemed to score it for Aljo. My opinion, I scored it 3-2 Aljo, 1-2, 4 for the Funk Master, 3 and 5 for Cejudo. Very close rounds, by the way. I believe 2 was a close one. I don't think 1 and 3 were. 5 wasn't. 4 a little bit. But in the end, I think the right guy won. And as I just said earlier, massive win for him. Is this the fight that gets him respect? Is this the fight that gets him this, that gets him that? Who the hell knows? Sometimes we see guys get respect later in their careers, i.e. Demetrius Johnson, who we're talking to later. Sometimes they don't connect. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And sometimes when you preach too much about respect, which I'm not saying he does, because even in the post-fight presser, he wasn't really harping on it. He seemed very content and happy with where he's at. Sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. There's a whole host of reasons as to why. And by the way, sometimes when you don't have that dance partner, it doesn't elevate you. And now he's got that dance partner who's very, very popular in Sean O'Malley. This is going to be a big fight, notoriety-wise and business-wise. And if he can beat Sean O'Malley, and especially do so in impressive fashion, that to me says it all. But to consider the fact that this guy has now won 9 fights in a row, and they all came after he was brutally knocked out by Marlon Moraes, that to me is what makes this most impressive. He was knocked out in 67 seconds by Marlon Moraes. 67 seconds. A vicious, vicious kick to the head. And he was out for a while. Remember that fight? That was, a long time ago now, December of 2017. We're approaching 6 years since that. He hasn't lost since, but I remember him on the mat. And I remember the talk going in to, the early days of his UFC career. It was all that Aljo doesn't like to get hit. Aljo doesn't like to get hit. And what happens if he gets knocked out? Remember that? Back in 14, 15, 16, he's too pretty. He doesn't like to get hit. He doesn't like the confrontation. Then he gets brutally knocked out, and it was like a Louisville slugger to his head. He was out for a while. And then the talk afterwards was he'll never be the same. He got hit. He got his lights, turned off. That's it. And what has he done since then? He beat Brett Johns. He beat Cody Stamann. He beat Jimmy Rivera. He beat Pedro Munoz. He beat Corey Sandhagen. Petr Yan fight. Beats Petr Yan. Decisively, in my opinion. Beats TJ Dillashaw. Beats Henry Cejudo. There's not a bum. There's not a cupcake. There's not a walk in the park among that entire list of names that I just mentioned. And so if this isn't enough, if it isn't enough to beat Henry Cejudo, if it isn't enough to defend the title 3 times, it may never be enough. And even if you take the Yan fight out, the first one, what about what he did in the second one? And think about the pressure that he was under and the neck surgery and coming back from all of that. Just think about all this stuff. This guy has arrived. He has arrived a long time ago. He's certainly worthy of all the praise and accolades and love and respect that he hopefully is getting. And if not, it's just one of those things. But on this show, and, I think in most MMA smart fan pundit circles, I think he is getting that respect. To me, he's, I think, top 6 pound for pound. Like, there's no denying. And he beats O'Malley. And then if he considers going up to 145, there's no denying. Let's talk to the guys a little bit more about this, because I want to talk about the in-arena reaction versus the home reaction. You're correct. You were there. Are you one of those people that scored it? Because it seemed to me, watching like the tweets and reading everything, it seemed like a lot of people who were there thought Cejudo won, and a lot of people who were at home or watching on TV thought Aljo won. How did you score it?
There was definitely a contrast between the two. It felt like in the arena people were seeing closer rounds for Henry, closer fight. Many people I was sitting next to thought maybe 2-2 heading into the fifth. Whereas online, I saw a lot of 3-1 Aljo, even 4-0 on certain cards for Aljo heading into the fifth. I personally scored it 3-2 for Aljo. I had round 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, so
Aljamain Sterling.
Oh, 1, 3, and 4. Interesting.
Yeah. 2 for Henry and 5 for Henry.
Okay, so that's I think that's different than the other scorecards too.
I think 2 and 3 were the closest rounds. I think those are probably the ones that were toughest to score. I think 1, Aljo did enough at the end to kind of come on. I think 4, Henry didn't have much, and it was kind of a close one, but it seemed like Aljo did the busiest work. And then 5 was clearly for Henry. So I think for me, 2 to 3 were the swings, and I had 3 for Aljo, 2 for Henry.
How'd you score it, GC?
Live watching it, I had 1, 2, and 4 for Aljo and 3 and 5 for Cejudo.
Okay.
But man, it was incredibly close. It's interesting that you say that because our friend TST, who was also at the arena, claimed that Cejudo won.
Right.
Like without a doubt, watching it live.
Yep. And it seemed like Sean O'Malley, who met with the press afterwards, said the same. And I saw a bunch of people say that as well. And I don't know if this is a fair statement to say, but it definitely seems like the most exciting part of the main card. The main card was a little bit slow, I will admit. The confrontation afterwards, which seems to be the sort of thing that Dana White and the UFC would shit on if it was done in Bellator. And honestly, if any other promotion did that and it resulted in the exact same way, meaning the jacket stuff and the pushing, whatever, everyone would be like, oh, this is so amateur. But when the UFC does it, it's okay. Dana White saying afterwards that it was a mistake. I would argue it wasn't a mistake because it only that's going to be replayed and cut up a million times leading up to their next fight. If you're Aljamain Sterling, and we'll ask him this question, and I don't know if anyone did at the post-fight presser. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. I think you were there. Are you annoyed that they did that, or are you smart enough to understand that all this is going to do is make the fight versus Sugi even bigger?
I don't know if that specific question was asked, but he did not have an issue with how everything went down. He was just...
I could see why someone would be annoyed.
Nah, he was kind of just like Merab's a gangster, like...
But not even the Merab thing. Like, if you're a guy who just won a fight and had a 3 to 4 month training camp and you just beat an Olympic gold medalist and a lot of people thought you were going to lose and you win, I can understand why someone would be like, get the fuck out of here. This is my moment. We'll do that later.
I think Aljo... knows where the money's knows where the money's at.
Yeah, it's your moment, but this is going to build to something much bigger in a few months.
He's been calling for this fight. There was no doubt who was next. There's no doubt who they both wanted next. I think he sees the bigger picture here.
Bigger fight, Aljo Sugar or Cejudo Sugar? Cejudo Sugar.
Right now, or are you talking about?
No, like what would have been the bigger
Cejudo
fight? Not right now, obviously not right now.
Probably Aljo. Just because he's coming in with the title, right? Henry would have, although Henry would have back the title.
Henry would have won, and he would have gotten the title back. That's a tough argument to make.
After the 3-year layoff, yeah, that probably would have been worth something. That's probably a little easier sell because Cejudo continues to kind of like make history. To be honest, probably the same.
Yeah,
there's probably not much of a difference. It's if we're talking about who's going to be the draw here, it's O'Malley's the one, so it doesn't really matter.
6 and 1/2 dozen in the other, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what they say. Yeah.
I am curious how Aljo feels about the Boston thing, because that is supposedly August 19th, and that's in 3 months.
Yeah,
I mean, most champions aren't coming around, every 3 months. Like Jamal Hill fought in January. He has nothing on the books. And I know that they're waiting for Yuri Prochaska, but like, when's the last time Amanda Nunes fought? I can see him being annoyed. Now, I did see him say, I want to fight September and then maybe December. So maybe he wants this activity, but I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can make that happen. And obviously they need a few title fights because there's been so many. And I think it'll be huge. I feels to me like he's over this whole respect thing, which I think is like, you stop. We can argue about it, but if he's the one arguing about it, it will never come. Shout out to my friend Pastor Johnny, who wrote this to me, as he usually does very eloquently after fights. He sends me emails. He's like, the ones who bang the drum about respect and all that stuff never get it. So he just needs to stop worrying about it. And I get the feeling he doesn't care. Like, he doesn't talk about that stuff anymore. And I think that's, to his benefit.
I think Aljamain has definitely come into his own as a person who is going to do what he's going to do and let you worry about it and not kind of change what he's doing based on the whims of other people. And I think a lot of that could be a product of the fact that, like, you think that winning the title and you think that beating TJ Dillashaw and you think that beating Henry Cejudo is going to be the thing that ultimately earns you respect, and then it's not, and people continue to kind of downplay your accomplishments. I think he's at the point where he knows that he can't control that part. I will say, a recent example of somebody who's been demanding respect and then did finally get it was Alexander Volkanovski. He'd been beating that drum for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Then he had the right fight with Islam Makhachev and did get his respect. So I don't know if it's a futile effort. I think you just need the right circumstances. I am somebody who has been talking about that I think Aljamain Sterling has been disrespected for a long time based on his accomplishments, right? There are reasons that people like him, don't like him. There are people who will cite the knee. There are people who will cite some of the cringe stuff he's doing, some of the personality, who he retweets on Twitter. All these reasons they will use to discredit him as a fighter, but they're not really reasons to discredit him as a fighter. His resume is rock solid. The names on it are incredible, and if it was somebody else, the situation might be different. So people look for ways to discredit him. I don't think there's a winning that situation. But with the right fight, because we like Sean O'Malley's the next fight, right? Do you in any circumstance think that Aljamain Sterling will get credit for beating Sean O'Malley, or will the conversation be Sean O'Malley can't wrestle? This was a layup. There's no winning this scenario.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, unless he knocks him out, right?
If he knocks him out, they're still going to say Sean O'Malley, like, he didn't have to worry about the wrestling. He knocked him out. There's always going to be an excuse.
I do suppose it's hard. It makes it a little bit harder for him just because the knee to get the belt and then 2 splitties and then the Dillashaw injury, it creates excuses for people that don't want to give him that credit.
Which none are his fault. He's beating the opposition in front of him.
It's
ridiculous, quite frankly.
It's rare that the more interesting post-fight discussion centers around the guy who lost the fight, but in this case, which is great. I love the fact that we know it's Sean next. I love the fact that we even have a date somewhat targeted. This is great. Like, there's no BS. Who's next? After the Leon fight in London, there was all this jockeying. There's no jockeying, and that's fun. But then on the flip side, the Cejudo question to me is the even bigger one to discuss and debate. A, does he stick around? He was non-committal. He took off the gloves. Seemed like he was upset, confused, disappointed. Probably thinks he won now as it all is going to sink in. Spoke briefly to his head coach, Captain Eric. Who's cracking open a beer over there? Is that Frank?
It's Joe. Starting a little early today.
Yeah, respect.
We're all starting early.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry about that. Missed breakfast. He implied that he's not walking away. And then initially I was thinking like, well, I guess, if you lose at 135 and there's all these guys at 135, you might as well just try the 145 thing once and for all and get it over with because, this is your best shot. You're not tied to a belt and you may not get a title shot at 135 anytime soon. But after watching that fight and thinking about it a little more, the trouble that he had, closing the distance with Aljamain, maybe Volkanovski is the exception to the rule, which is weird because he's a champion. Against the top of that 145-pound weight class, he's going to have a hell of a lot more trouble. So I don't think 145 is the answer for him. He called out Merab around an hour and a half or so ago. Merab has a serious hand injury, and it's unclear at this point if he's going to need surgery or not. He may, and if he needs the surgery, he's going to be out for quite some time. So I'd be very surprised, unless he miraculously avoids it, that he'd be ready to fight in August. What the hell happens to Henry now?
Yeah.
Eric?
I like the Merab fight, but I think...
I don't like the Merab fight if I'm Merab. Why should I take that fight? Here's the situation with Merab. Sorry to ask you a question and then interrupt. They're pissed at him, which is crazy to me because he's like such a lovable guy.
Yeah.
The reason they want him to fight Umar is because he's not fighting Aljo. And it's not. And what's so shitty about that is he if he wasn't Aljo's friend, if he hated Aljo, he still wasn't getting the Aljo fight. It was always going to Sean O'Malley because Sean O'Malley's the bigger draw. And yet they are annoyed that he's trying to say no because friendship is bigger than a belt to him. Wow, what a shitty guy. And so they're trying to book him against Umar Nurmagomedov. Why the fuck should he fight Umar Nurmagomedov? As good as he is, Umar hasn't fought a top 15 guy, let alone a top 5 guy, let alone a top 10 guy. Why should he take that fight? So now they're going to try to make him fight Henry. Why should he fight Henry? In what universe?
Then?
He should fucking fight for the belt.
What? But his
there's
friend
a world
has
by
the belt.
But there's a world by the time his hand heals. I mean, because Henry does say hashtag UFC Boston in that tweet, and there's just no way by the things that you're saying and Merab has said about his injury, he's not going to be ready by August.
I'm just confused at the argument. You're saying he doesn't want to fight for the belt. We respect that, which we do. But he should fight for the belt. Like, who's he fighting then?
Oh, Aljo laid it out very clearly. He said he's moving up after Sean. He beats Sean. He moves up to 45. Belt is vacated. Merab fights.
So, Ariel, you're saying if there's a vacant title, Merab should take no fight but the title fight.
1,000%.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Especially after his performance against
I have no issue with that.
If Aljo's fighting in 3 months, just wait. You just fought in March.
Sure, yeah, no issue with that. If Merab wants to fight, though, there's got to be a name he has to fight. Like
Barack Obama was president the last time Colby Covington fought.
I'm saying if Merab wants to fight, I'm not.
Get my point.
I'm not.
No, because I know people are going to be like, you can't sit and wait. The dude who's fighting for the welterweight title. Sean O'Malley fought in October. This guy fought in freaking March.
No, there's precedent for that. I'm saying, if Merab wants to fight, there has to be a name. Henry Cejudo makes a lot of sense.
But again, it's why DDP versus Robert Whittaker doesn't make sense. It's why Arnold Allen versus Max Holloway doesn't make sense. Why would you kill off the number one contender with a guy who's not getting a title shot? Now, I know Henry hasn't lost twice like those other guys did to the champion. But to me, it just feels like a shitty situation. Any other circumstance, a guy with Merab's resume, with the wins that he has had recently, Aldo, Jan, etc., he doesn't have to fight a Cejudo after that. But
again,
they're going to force the issue because he doesn't want to fight Aljo. Why not just wait to see? And by the way, if O'Malley wins, now what do you have on your hands? You have O'Malley versus Merab after what happened on Saturday?
But why? I don't understand why these two things can't coexist. Why can't Merab sit out and wait and see? He doesn't have to fight Henry.
Oh, they're going to try to force it. If Henry wants that, are you kidding? They're going to force the issue.
Why does Merab have to take it? Is what I'm saying.
I mean, he doesn't have to take it, but they'll take him out of the rankings. They'll say, "Oh, what are you talking about? Did you just enter the MMA world? Did you not do you not see the way they
he has to take it.
They removed
they
removed Leon from the rankings because he wouldn't fucking.
I don't see the world where they're just like Merab doesn't want to wait until August or September and then.
Bro, they tried to book Merab to fight Umar this weekend, May 13th,
and it didn't happen.
Yeah, and they're mad at him.
And he's in the rankings.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
I don't agree. It just doesn't.
I think he just needs to wait.
He just needs to wait. There's no.
Don't sign any contract. See what happens with that.
If he wants to fight, Henry's a great fight. If he doesn't, don't fight. It doesn't. I don't understand.
Merab is the man. Sorry.
Okay, nobody's disagreeing with that. Merab is great.
He's like Forrest Gump. He just shows up in all these the background of all these situations. It's like Forrest Gump, like when Nixon is there and all these things. He's just like there. How is he there? He's there in the back when Cejudo and Aljo. He's just like right in the middle. And then the O'Malley thing with the jacket. The guy, I don't know. I don't know how you can hate that guy. Anyway, I don't know how I got on this whole Merab tangent here, but he was kind of like the unsung hero of Saturday night.
He helped himself.
After the co-main and the main, when Merab put on the jacket, that was the highlight of the night.
Oh, 100%. So what do you do for Cejudo? Do you stay if it's not Merab? Who are you?
If Merab doesn't want that fight, then just another. This is what I was going to say about Cejudo. It depends on what his end goal is. If his end goal is just to recapture the bantamweight title, you probably just wait. Try to pick off one of the top guys, and then you can probably get another crack after O'Malley or Merab or whoever. If you want something. It seemed like it was building toward a Volkanovski fight. If that's the legacy fight that you kind of want, now you can have a title in 3 different divisions, I would go to 45 and try to pick off a top contender there and then go after Volkanovski.
Man, those guys are too big.
I agree with you. I don't like that stylistically. It's the reason why I favored Aljo heading into this fight. I think the range is just too much for Cejudo. But is recapturing the bantamweight title his end goal, or was that just a way to shortcut to Alexander Volkanovski?
Felt like it to me. I mean, he said it himself. He said Aljo, O'Malley, and then Volk.
Yeah, but again, Volk's the end, right? Volk's the end goal of that. So if you want to toil away at 35 and try and get that belt, you can, but I don't think that really gets him closer to the legacy stuff. I think Henry Cejudo's got a limited amount of fights left. If Volkanovski is the one that's going to be the legacy fight for you, going to get you titles in 3 different divisions, I'd take the crack at a 45 contender. If that goes south, call it a career and go from there. If it goes north, all of a sudden you can sell, hey, I had a really close fight with the bantamweight champion. I just took out a 45 contender. Feed me Alexander Volkanovski. And for a guy who, let's call it what it is. Featherweight's not loaded with options. Max Holloway's sitting over here calling out Korean Zombie. There's ways that Henry Cejudo could slide into that conversation with 1 win. So that's what I would do.
Man, there's a lot of fun fight for him at 35. I know that may not.
It feels like from his tweet that he wants to stay at 35.
I love all those fights. I would love to see Henry versus all
Cheeto,
these guys.
Sanhagen, Jan, Rob Font.
Yeah, but
What's the goal?
No, I know. Also,
Run into
worth
the same
noting.
problems against a guy like Sandhagen, though.
Yeah, there's some long guys at bantamweight. But I mean, again,
Sure,
featherweight's a different like Max Holloway.
Versus Yair. Yair is like 5'11". Max Holloway's what, 5'10". Like that, you're really talking about serious
Crazy
reach and size
difference.
advantages.
Yeah.
We forget, Cejudo has been through so much in terms of, like the physical toll that his body has taken over the last 20, 25 years, from wrestling to Olympics to now fighting and cutting to 125. I don't think he has much left in him, but I would be very surprised. I said this on Saturday. I maintained it even after the tweet. I don't think he worked all this, time to get back just to leave after losing so, close. And again, just think, if Derek Cleary scores that 5th round in his favor, he's the champion today.
Yeah, he's the champion.
He just took the champ to a split decision.
Exactly. I think it was the emotions of losing an incredibly close fight. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and now I think as everything kind of settles and he gets further away from the fight and he keeps thinking it more, I think there's no question he's going to fight again.
Can I tell you who the biggest winner was on Saturday who didn't fight? The biggest winner who didn't fight on Saturday was, in my opinion, no doubt, Colby Covington. Colby Covington was the biggest winner on Saturday because if Bilal Muhammad or Gilbert Burns would have gone out and knocked out the other, had a decisive win, gone on the microphone, got people excited on Monday, today we'd be talking about how you have to change plans and go with that guy, especially if it was Bilal, because he had the history with Leon, and reverse course and make that the title fight. Because the fight, he won fair and square, and I'm not going to sit here and knock him. He did what he had to do. It's very impressive, the streak that he's on. Gilbert's tough, injured, arm, shoulder, or not, because it wasn't anything to really get people excited about. Now there's no real push to change. Now it's just all right, let's go. Colby, Leon, let's see it. Let's move on with our lives. You get what I'm saying? So I felt like he was the real big winner from all of that.
2 dominoes fell in that, right? Like Jorge Masvidal.
Gone
By a Gilbert Burns decision that wasn't that exciting. Now Gilbert Burns, gone. Bilal Muhammad. There's people who much like Aljamain Sterling. He did this. So always make excuses to kind of discredit that. Yeah, Colby Covington sitting pretty. I find it hard to believe they'd skip Colby for
there was no way. Once Dana dug his heels in 1,000 times.
I think Colby was going to get the shot no matter how Bilal
But you're right.
performed. And I think Bilal locked up gets the winner of that fight.
Do you think there's any scenario in which they make him fight someone else? Because think about this. October, let's say they fight in October, which we keep saying October because Leon said October, but October is Abu Dhabi. Are they putting Leon versus Colby in Abu Dhabi? That would make no sense to me. Also, by the way, you know what would make a lot of there's only 2 great places to do Bilal versus Leon too. One is Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah.
That would make all the sense in the world. Muslim fighter fighting in a predominantly Muslim country, no-brainer, right? Or London. Yeah. So it's a shame that they did that. Again, I still think that they should do Bilal versus Leon now because he's earned it and fought, but they're not.
Absolutely. He's a 10-fight unbeaten streak. That's tough to make a mask. Who's going to fight now? Shavkat or someone?
Well, no. Now, so that's the thing. But if Leon fights in October, or I don't know, maybe they save him for MSG, or maybe they do it in September, the winner of that fight is only going to be available when? April? May? So that means now Bilal's going to have no momentum. The timing is just really shitty.
But so this is the same as the Merab conversation.
Yeah,
it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. So Merab and Bilal should sit out or fight. I mean, it's.
I think Bilal should sit out and wait for the title shot. I think he's earned that. I mean, you talked about O'Malley. By the time he fights, it'll have been 10, 11 months since the last time he fought. It could be the same thing for Bilal.
Yeah, the quick turnaround here is helping O'Malley because I thought it would be like November that the winner of the Aljo Cejudo fights. But yeah, I think Colby's the big winner there. Good on Bilal. It's amazing what he's done, especially when I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. Sucks for Gilbert Burns. The real lesson is, in my opinion, is like if you sit and everyone just kind of fights and cancels each other out, you can be sitting pretty too. Like Gilbert fought 3 times since January. This was his 3rd fight since January. It's like 3 months.
He was in a position where he needed it. He needed some momentum.
He was going to be the backup fighter, remember?
Yes, the backup.
He really put his freaking, thing on the line there. He was going to get paid to just be the backup fighter and backup fighter. Like, to be honest, like he gave up a title shot.
No, we're not accepting that backup fighter as automatic title shot.
Yeah, I mean, he also probably got a pretty healthy payday for stepping in on short notice for this.
One would hope.
He needed it, but he didn't get it, and I think that's why we saw him walking out of the cage. He looked pretty heartbroken.
Dejected. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask the body. January,
106 days,
April.
I think it was.
Yeah. Only thing more
late January, early May too.
It's crazy. Only thing more impressive than that was, like in the span of 3 weeks, I think like Bad Bunny got some award, and then he was at the Met Gala, and then he competed at Backlash. I saw that exact same.
Last week you couldn't even name a Bad Bunny song, and now you're
talking about. I freaking.
You're like, you guys ever even heard of him? Like, I don't believe that he's the most streamed artist in the world.
Me? I said that?
Oh my gosh, are we gonna have to pull the tape?
I did not. I know. I said apparently. I know him for. What are you talking about?
You said what's can anyone name a Bad Bunny song? And I had to say, Moscow Mule. Can't wait to see him in concert. And he's a big Bad Bunny fan. You don't remember any of this?
Wait, I think I was on the phone when this happened.
Yeah, but I never said that he did it. Was it? He was in WrestleMania 2 years ago.
We're getting a text from Oscar Willis right now. He's confirming it as well.
What?
That you didn't know who Bad Bunny was.
That's fucked up. That is so fucked up.
I also remember
he was in WrestleMania 2 years ago. Of course I knew who he was.
Yeah, you may have known who he was, but now you're talking about he's your number 1 artist on Spotify.
I love him. We listened all day yesterday.
You said you didn't know he was a big deal.
That's crazy.
Thank you, Andy.
Wow.
Andy's laptop is covered with Bad Bunny stickers. You came for her guy, and now
is that true, Andy?
Yeah, for real.
I didn't. Did you see?
No.
You missed it?
Oh my gosh, you have to watch.
Oh my God, Andy, it's the greatest entrance of all time. Someone showed her in the middle. Andy's the greatest thing. He comes out to this song, Chambea. What does that even mean, Chambea? Do you know?
No, not really. That's more like slang, yeah.
Whatever it was.
Slang, yeah.
He freaking comes out and the place, they were in Puerto Rico. Top 5 greatest crowds that have ever experienced. I wasn't there live, but watch. Instead of doing the 1, 2, they would go, 1, 2, and everyone it was amazing. It was that Puerto Rican crowd. They were going nuts. And then when he came out, the freaking place exploded. It was unbelievable.
I mean, he's the man.
He is the man. All right, shout out to Bad Bunny. Maybe our first guest of the day is a fan of Bad Bunny's. And by the way, I do not accept any of this slander. I've been a big Bad Bunny mark for a long time. In fact, I think I have some merch of his.